All right, guys, the Utah Jazz beat the Brooklyn Nets. This is the SLC Dunk postgame show. I'm your host, Hanson James. So, what was going to be a scheduled loss for the Jazz when Rudy Gobert sits turns out to be a really nice victory for the Utah Jazz over a Brooklyn Nets team who have the same record as the Utah Jazz coming into this game. The Brooklyn Nets are better this year than they've been. They play hard. They have a good coach. They have a good front office who's set up their team to have a really nice future. And the Jazz were able to find a victory. So the Jazz should be happy about what they were able to do tonight. I thought tonight was going to be day one of the Utah Jazz tank. And I don't know if that changes after tonight's victory, but it's really nice to see the Jazz get a nice win against a team that very well could have beat them tonight. Just a little bit about the Brooklyn Nets. It's always nice to see Trevor Booker come back to the Jazz. Trevor Booker is a personal favorite of mine. I love watching Trevor Booker play. He plays hard. He has heart. He's a leader. Everyone who's on the floor with Trevor Booker just seems to play harder. And I just love his fire and tenacity. And he plays well. He played well against the Jazz tonight. I think he scored something like 16 points. So Trevor Booker is always going to be a favorite of mine. I'm always going to be sad about us not being able to re-sign him. We could have re-signed him, and the Nets stole him away from us. So it's good to see Trevor Booker having a nice home with the Brooklyn Nets. I think he's going to be really nice for D'Angelo Russell, who looks like an absolute steal for the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, we've seen the stats, and I haven't watched every Brooklyn game, but every time I've had a chance to sit down and watch the Brooklyn Nets play, D'Angelo Russell's play kind of jumps off the page. He's going to be just a steal for those guys. It's unbelievable. So hats off to the Brooklyn Nets for getting a really nice player into D'Angelo Russell when they didn't have any picks. I mean, the Nets were supposed to be dead in the water in terms of young talent. And when you look at them, they've got D'Angelo Russell, you've got Hollis Jefferson, Karis LeVert. They've got some nice young players. If I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan, I'm starting to get excited about some of these things. So a really nice Brooklyn Nets team that the Jazz sat Rudy Gobert against. He got that bone bruise last night, which honestly looked terrible. I was incredibly surprised that Rudy Gobert returned to the game last night because that knee went inwards. It went, how do we do this? Like this, if you need a visual. But yeah, it's incredible that Rudy Gobert did not play and the Jazz get a victory. Derrick Favors looked incredible. And what I think we take from this is the Jazz now have an answer to one of their offensive problems. It's the spacing. The Jazz, when they're playing Derrick Favors and Rudy Gobert, both high-quality pick-and-roll players, both of them are great in pick-and-roll. They can't play at the same time almost, it seems like. I think tonight was a huge tell for the Utah Jazz that whether we have Derrick Favors on the floor or Rudy Gobert, they have no space to work, and there's a reason why we're struggling to get points and run a pick-and-roll. Because every time either Derrick rolls to the rim or Rudy rolls to the rim, it's always clogged. There's nowhere to go. But tonight, there were lanes, and Derrick Favors looked like Derrick Favors from 2 years ago, pre all the injuries. So it was just really nice to see what Derrick Favors was doing. You know, we're going to start the next, I don't know how long Rudy is going to rest, but it was just interesting to see the Jazz start Thabo Sefolosha tonight, who played really well. Really interesting that Thabo started, and we won the game. We looked really good. So that's interesting. I think the Jazz have some thinking to do and some questions answered tonight. It's a small sample size. It's one game, but in one game we saw that the Jazz, when they have space and they have their high level pick and roll bigs, both Derrick Favors and Rudy Gobert playing that center spot, they score, and our offense doesn't look so bad. I would not be surprised if Rudy gets healthy, or that maybe the Jazz decide, you know what, let's make a move, or we got to figure something out where Rudy and Derrick aren't on the floor at the same time, because when they are, it's just not working, and when they aren't, we saw what happened tonight. And I'll be honest, it is the Brooklyn Nets who have the same record as the Utah Jazz, but let's be honest, they're in the Eastern Conference. Don't come at me, Brooklyn. I'm just being honest. You guys look great. I really like you. D'Angelo looks great. But this is a team that was not slated to win a lot of games. And Rodney Hood finally shot well. Donovan had a huge night, and we still only won by 6. So the Jazz have some interesting questions that they need to answer. at the end of this year. And so I don't know what they're going to do, but it's very clear that when we have one of our bigs on the floor with a floor spacing power forward, whether it's Thabo Sefolosha or Jonas Jerebko, or if Joe Johnson ever comes back, that, we got to find a way to space that floor, because Rudy and Faves are both excellent pick and roll bigs, and when they have space, they both are effective. And if there's one thing that we learned tonight, there might be a little bit of redundancy on the Jazz, that we might be paying two centers to do the same job, and that's tough. That's really tough. So Jazz need to answer some questions with that. So nice to see Rodney Hood hit some shots. He got hot. Rodney Hood is as streaky as they come, but it was nice to see Rodney Hood shoot a high percentage from three. It was a big part of us winning this game, because it was that offense that has been so starved from this team. And it's no surprise that Rodney Hood hitting shots helped Donovan Mitchell score like 26, 28 points tonight. So when we have floor spacing and we have offensive weapons going, the Jazz offense does really well. It's interesting. The Jazz are in such a strange spot this season, because there's so many. We talked about this before the season started. They could go in so many different directions, whether it's, make the playoffs, 7 or 8 seed, be kind of a dark horse defensive juggernaut, that if the Jazz can be offensively efficient and somehow be a, not worse than 20th in the league in offense, they're a dangerous team. But the last 4 games in our 4-game losing streak, we've been like the worst offense in the league, literally. So it's tough. It's really tough for what the Jazz. I mean, if we're terrible, if we have like the worst offense in the league, but we have a good defense, you wonder, is there anything we're trying to work for in this season, or should we be working for Luka Doncic? So tonight was a really interesting night for the Jazz. Showed that they have defensive bigs that can pick and roll, but maybe might not be good together on the same team, which stinks, because Derrick Favors is awesome. Rudy Gobert is awesome. Both awesome, but they both kind of play the same position. They both kind of do similar and the same things. It's tough. A lot of decisions for Dennis Lindsey to make. Donovan Mitchell is an absolute star, guys. We have an absolute steal in the draft. It's frustrating that we didn't have Donovan Mitchell to pair with George Hill and Gordon Hayward this year, because we would have been a legit contender. It's frustrating. But what are you going to do? The Jazz, when we get Dante Exum back, I promise you he's going to be excellent. It's frustrating that we don't get to see him, but every month we get a little bit closer to seeing Dante back. It's going to be fantastic. The team just has so much potential for the future, and we'll see what happens. I want to reiterate, let's not get too crazy over a win over the Brooklyn Nets, who are not a great team that play in the East, and so that helps their record, but they are a good team, But we'll just see what happens. If the Jazz lost tonight, guys, I'm not kidding. I was coming here with my Tank Commander hat, and we were just going to go. We'll just start talking about the draft picks. But the Jazz won, so that's good. If the Jazz lost the game tonight, we were looking at a big-time losing streak, because the season is not going to get easy, and December is going to be rough. It's going to be very, very rough. So we're going to have to see what the Jazz can do to keep this up, if they're going to be a playoff team, or if the Jazz are going to make some moves. I don't know when we see Joe Johnson again. It's very obvious Joe Johnson is a big part of this team's future and ability to win games, because his offense was big time for us last year, and that included with Gordon Hayward and George Hill. So if we get Joe Johnson back and he starts hitting 40% from 3 again at that 4 spot, who knows? We become pretty effective at that point. But, without him, we struggle at times to find scoring. Like the third quarters we've had where we've just had long stretches where we can't score buckets, that's when you would see plays from Joe Johnson where he just goes and he gets you a couple buckets that just gets you over the hump. But without having that guy, the Jazz have struggled. And Donovan Mitchell has been close to that guy. He's not there yet. And Rodney Hood has struggled this year. Not tonight, which was really awesome to see, but overall this season he's really struggled. And so that's why the Jazz have struggled. And so, we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Jazz bring Joe Johnson back. I don't know. I was honestly starting to get my tinfoil hat. If we lost tonight, and I was starting to wonder if we're ever going to see Joe Johnson again, if the Jazz just trade him and we allow ourselves to just lose games while developing Donovan and get the Slovenian slinger. But Not tonight, because the Jazz won in a big-time victory. So nice to see vintage Derrick Favors. He looked really good. It's just obvious the Jazz have two centers that play really good pick and roll and that can guard other centers and do a great job. And so, if anything, the Jazz have really two great assets in both Derrick Favors and Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert being kind of the centerpiece of this team. We'll see what happens. A lot of interesting stuff, guys. Make sure to go to SLC Dunk to read up about it, because you can bet we're going to talk about this all season long. Figure out what's the best move for the Jazz, whether it's go playoffs, do the opposite, just kind of wait and see. Just a really interesting season for the Jazz. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment in SLC Dunk, comment on the video, comment on Facebook, go to Instagram, Twitter, all of it. We got you covered. Talk to you later.